Okay. So we are live. I'm just looking at the YouTube feed to make sure that it registers. There we go. Yep, perfect. All right. Well, welcome back to Bookish Chaz. We're talking all things Bobiverse Book 3 today, and we'll probably end up getting into a little other Bobiverse stuff from the previous books too. There's a lot of overlap of characters and ideas. I'm happily joined by my good friends Karl and Pete from Geek on My Sleeve. Glad to have them here. And in my opinion, one of the foremost authorities on Bob. So I'm so glad to have you guys here. And yeah, so make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Click a like if you're getting value out of my content, and share it with your friends, especially if you have friends who watch or who have read the Bobiverse books. Point them my way to this stream. So yeah, we'll get right into it. I'll give Karl and Pete a minute to just kind of introduce themselves real quick, and then we'll get into it.
Hello. Thank you for the awesome intro, Chaz. Always enjoy hanging out. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good. As I'm setting up last moment, getting ready to hang out. We are a bit of Bobiverse super fans. Dennis E. Taylor is one of our favorite authors. Really just looking forward to hanging out with you guys and talking about the Bobiverse. I'll let Peter do his intro and plug all the good stuff.
Alrighty. Yeah, glad to be on the channel. Bobiverse is one that I keep coming back to time and time again. We've gone up to book 4, but they're pretty different, so not a whole lot of causal connection spoilers. Yeah, just excited to talk about the universe. I'm glad to be here.
All right, awesome. Well, yeah, very, very good to have you guys on. If you aren't aware, we've done a previous stream as well for Bobiverse Book 2, and we also talked a little bit about Bobiverse 1. So I will try and get a link for that video put in the description below, so you guys can check out that. And we have one more book coming up. We've got Heaven's River.
Yeah.
And who
It's
knows
a
how
lot
many?
of fun.
Yeah, who knows how many more too. Apparently, he's not done with the series. So,
no series should ever die. It's just whether or not they're still writing in it.
Right.
And with the way this one ends, it leaves room for exploration and more von Neumann probe type stuff.
So I feel that the trilogy, the first 3, wraps up an arc really well. Book 4 is a lot of fun, and I believe he's tweeted that he plans to do several more. One of his tweets, I'll do my best to find it. It's and 5 and 6 and 7. He's going to keep writing in the universe, which is a lot of fun. And just looking at where we are in book 3. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but at this point in the series, it's over 500 Bobs, at least 10 generations, and then just continue that timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much enjoying the series, and yeah, we've got an infinite number of Bobs. For an infinite number of possibilities down the road. So I'm anxious to see what he does and see what nerdy names he names that the different Bobs get themselves into.
A theme.
Yeah, most definitely. So I thought we'd start off kind of just talking about some of the key stories in the book. There were a lot of character moments for the different Bobs, but some of them really stuck out. I think for me, the change in Riker was pretty interesting. Making it very making a very matter of fact statement that he's no longer Riker. He's Will now. He's taken on a much more serious role, and I think that probably has to do with partly with he's developed that really deep connection with his Earth family.
Right. He's
Yeah,
the point man for the ephemerals. Right.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. What was your guys' take on that, and what do you think of his interactions with his family members, especially now that many of them are aging, and that was really he's at the birthday party for one of his nephews who's now 70, I think it was, something
And he
like
was
that.
he was like a baby when we first met him, right?
Yeah,
So just in
right.
that scene alone, you get to see just like truly how much time has gone by for
Mhm.
Bob, or Will, or et cetera, et cetera. And he was like in his early 30s when
Mhm.
he died. So like just the timeline since then, I could ramble. Pete, do you want to talk about Will first?
So about Will, this is one thing that I truly appreciate that Dennis E. Taylor does is each of the Bobs come from another Bob, and they kind of have that environmental pressure or everything. And since Riker was the one dealing with a lot of the Soul Enclave and, Butterworth and whatnot, he's kind of turned off to him, as well as after seeing, his sister's lineage continue and then for them to age and them to die off, he's, you know, kind of given the more fade into legend and ephemeral side to all the other Bobs. But yeah, it's sad, seeing everybody grow up and then to go on and
He also dealt with Homer and just everything on
yeah,
Earth. And in a lot of ways, like that's been his sense of purpose, his grounding, his mission for, literally generations now.
Right.
Compared to all the other different Bobs, several generations down the line, who are 100% disconnected from actual ephemerals.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did we talk about going through Homer and then there was the terrorists and just
Mhm.
it? Yeah. Gosh, Pete, hold me accountable on no spoilers for book 4. And if I start slipping on jargon, call me out. But yeah, Will is one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, there have been a lot of sobering moments that have brought him to where he is, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, you talked about Homer. We did deal with that in book 2, just that horrendous event that just made Homer feel like he couldn't hack it anymore after being violated like he was.
Right.
And that seemed to be a real huge loss for Will.
Mm-hmm.
And then to give him kind of more of a, that really seemed to drive home his mortality to him, even though he's not technically mortal anymore. He
Right.
still has that
we
sense of
get
mortality.
a little bit of that in this book where they're saying, oh, you can always be recovered from a backup, but it's not really you. Kind of the same
Right.
thing of when they make their next cohort, they all have diverging paths and
Mm-hmm.
Right.
they're similar theme, but it's not. Yeah, it's not you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you always lose a little bit of yourself with each subsequent incarnation. And that's I think that's a real challenge. And I kind of, they didn't play on it much
Mm-hmm.
with how he felt about Howard's.
I was going to say that's the exact opposite situation where Howard has, fallen head over heels for Bridget, and his is I guess we do get the whole way through because he initially deals with them when they land on Vulcan, and he's talking to what's her first husband's name?
Stefan.
Talking
yeah,
to
Stefan,
Yeah.
and Howard and Bridget, and just now she's older and she's got kids and the whole court battle system, and but then he just keeps. Howard's probably the only one keeping with the humanity aspect. The fact that he's now adopting kids and he's taking in refugees, or not refugees but orphans, and yeah, he's probably the only one keeping the human element alive.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. And it was interesting when he walked into the room at the Bob Moot with Bridget and everybody kind of at first they were, and then all of a sudden they were okay with it and everything. But that was, for me, I didn't mean to go on a tangent from Will, but that for me was just I did not see that coming. I did not expect Bridget to finally be okay. I think I want to be assimilated into the Bobverse, and
she came a long way because it was a hard no. How long ago?
Right,
for religious reasons. And before I go too far down that rabbit hole, we went from like the Will to the Howard. Depending on how we count it, Will is first generation, right? He was the first cohort of Bob 2.0 or 3.0, however you want to count it, because he was a backup. But I want to say Howard is what, like 3-4 generations out at that point.
Yeah, he would be, I guess, 4th generation, because there was Charles, and then Howard came from Charles.
Okay.
Right, I think, if I remember right.
It sounds right. It sounds right. It's hard with 500 Bobs at this point.
Yeah.
But to see just kind of how those branches go and how they progress and develop and the choices they make, we also get the contrast of like 10 generations out in this book. And in a way, Bob started off very much like, it was just different variations of Bob. But by book 3, so much time has progressed that we've kind of gone into a collective instead of the individual. Right.
And he was only Bob original for 30 years, and he's already surpassed that in several of his iterations, as well as we get the whole like Bill incidents where he just gets to play, rerouting and mad scientist over here. That's one thing Dennis does well, the environmental pressures leading to how they're developing and what their current interests are.
And they started splitting as early as the first cohort, right? Because Bill went all mad scientist and really worked on the was it the Rocky or the Bullwinkle? Worked on the Bullwinkle.
Right.
And then Garfield made his Rocky, and Garfield is 1 generation below. And we also get to see just kind of how the initial rules that got set, where the senior Bob was kind of like the default, and how the progression of that, because like Bob had a couple cohorts, and eventually they're like, hey, I'm going to move on. Right.
Yeah.
He only had 2. He still stayed pretty
he was a bad von Neumann probe. But they started diverging, and Bob didn't really go anywhere. He hung out with the Deltons this whole book, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's where
talk about looking for a second family.
Holding on to his humanity side, at the same time not wanting to be with humans.
Yeah. He was probably the closest to a sense of humanity that we still have in the family of Bobs. Because he still seeks he actively seeks out that human interaction. I mean, some of the others do too, like Howard and such, but yeah, like you said, Bob really got heavily invested in the Deltons.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed the Delton arc as a whole, just seeing them develop and, playing Sky God. And I think it was more book 2 there where, they're going back to their original camp and now there's more problems. And the first time he gets kicked out when he drops a rock on,
No more Sky
our
God.
Griffin
The
little outcropping.
we have ultimate stealth mode.
Yep.
With the Griffins. Yeah.
Right.
And that ephemerals, man.
Whoa, and so
They
that's
getting too close to them. This happens. This is why we don't make ourselves vulnerable, guys. Like Bob was a loner.
Oh yeah.
And yet
big time.
And then the first couple generations get themselves really close, and Will kind of seems burnt out. Anybody who interacts with them after they get set up, they're kind of like, hey, I want to take off now. Okay, thanks, bye.
Right. Yeah, especially Bob right there at the end. I mean, I don't know if we want to go clear to the end yet, but
it's your show. Spoilers all the way up to the end of book 3, right?
Exactly. Spoilers.
Fair
spoiler
game.
warning, big time. But yeah, it was really interesting how right at the end, they asked Bob if he was going to join in, and he's like, no, I think I'm okay sitting this one out, and I kind of wonder if we won't see original Bob in book 4. I won't I won't leave an opening for you guys to spoil book 4, right? But I kind of got the feeling
it leaves
that
off at an
Bob
interesting
won't show
spot,
up.
though.
Yeah, it does.
Book 4 is a whole new chapter and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But the pilgrimage, the feels of everybody who showed up there. And
yes.
I don't want to diverge too much, but just how far we got with the androids too. And again, just kind of looking at who's interested in hanging on to their humanity. That's how Howard was able to date. It started off as like a store mannequin, all the way through granddad with full bodily functions.
Like, yep, exactly. Except for one
upgrade, gas, everything.
Right, exactly. Except for one upgrade that he and Bridget haven't agreed on yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure that upgrade will eventually come. Yeah, that's yeah, that
Howard kind of gets the life that Bob wish he had. Right? Like the traditional white picket fence, like not quite. He went through the fields when she married Stefan, but afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what is it? Marcus over at Poseidon, where he's now
that
trying
was
to
a fun story arc.
The sea with his dolphin android.
Right.
I don't know. It was kind of fun watching him slowly shift things and floating cities, but at the same time, it just made me think more of like ephemerals and why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But then leading off where he's going to who's the Russian probe?
Oh yeah. Oh goodness.
It's gonna bug me now. Anyway, but the Russian probe wants to go and sail all the seas, and that's who he was before he became a replicant, as well as Bridget still has her cataloging all the different life, and I'm sorry, drawing blanks on name. The Bob who was cataloging the paths before the others got there, and wanting to terraform their old world while building up the new world. And the Pav arc was pretty funny to me. Oh, I can't remember the phrasing, but it's like critters with broken brains because they don't want to accept payment.
Right.
Are you Trekkie, Chaz?
I am. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
Dennis
Not
C.
as
Taylor
much.
is a self-proclaimed Trekkie too.
Uh-huh.
And just thinking about like the Bobs where they are and just the time
Mhm.
scale for me is a lot of fun. Like imagine these civilizations, we've gone a couple hundred years right now, and
Right.
just all the different Bobs, all the different worlds, all the different like oh yeah, like the androids and everything, making
Mhm.
dolphins, making like whole species.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely have been getting the data vibe with the work they're doing on the androids.
Yeah,
And
it's an interesting thought process about like where those lines are, because he is a
yeah.
replicant, right? Copy
Right.
from but he's all digital. And
Yeah.
then Guppy kind of getting a bit more snark and sass, and um yeah.
That was one thing I thought I wanted to see fleshed out more because I want to say it's book 2 when we do a Amy Guppy controlled thing for like auto manufacturing, and I
Yeah.
expected him to either them to get some random report that, hey, the as humans we're all pretty clustered together and he's off like scouting the North Pole or something, and we find some
Yeah.
other threat to come at us, or for something more to come from there. As well as we keep getting those oh, what's the scene where he's like, I could have sworn there was sardonic amusement coming from Guppy. I don't know how you would,
Yeah.
describe that on the fish face, and you
He's
get
kind of getting his
like
own personality.
connection
Yeah.
Dennis C. Taylor,
impressions,
can we get
but
a side series from Guppy's point of view and just
That would
about
that
like
would be
life at home when Guppy, yeah.
that would be entertaining. I would buy into that.
Admiral Akbar.
Admiral Akbar. Yeah. That would be cool. Yeah, you can definitely see his influences, especially when some of the other Bobs uh, break away from that more close knit Trekkie sci-fi tradition and go for
Mm-hmm.
things like Bert and Ernie and Phineas and Ferb. And he's like, "Wait a minute,
It's
what?"
across the nerd spectrum. Like you
Yeah,
got
yeah,
everything from a
exactly.
hard tech, hard sci-fi to adult Saturday morning cartoons or whatever.
Yep.
Thor,
Yeah.
Garfield, Luke, Marvin.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm horrible with names, so
There
I
were
might
some
do something
dwarves in
similar if I
there.
ever
There was
write.
a Hungry at one point.
Oh, that's
Like they
right.
go through the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
trilogy or the whole yeah.
Yeah, under Mario's troop. Yeah, Bashful and Dopey and yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
whole gambit there. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny just to see how they diverge from that straight sci-fi beginning to breaking off into just general nerddom. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's been fun.
There's a lot of fun references in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll throw Peter on the bus with me. We miss a lot of like traditional pop culture references, but there were a lot of good like sci-fi references in here, even other sci-fi series at some point. Like the themes just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And as far as sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to have a squirrel moment and talk about some of all the other cool stuff in here, but
Oh yeah, go for it.
I was about to say like the others. We haven't even touched on the others, and that was supposed to be like
Yes.
our big threat, right?
Yeah,
Right.
The
and the
build up.
title, all these
Mm-hmm.
worlds are going to be taken out.
Yeah.
We found them end of book 1. Is that
Yeah,
In the
right?
book
yeah,
one,
because
right.
I wrote Mario off, and book 1, I was like, oh, he's dead. But then he ends up saving our bacon and helping us prep.
Right.
So the others ended up finding the Chinese probe. So they spoke
Uh-huh.
Mandarin. And we've kind of
Yeah.
like had all this buildup, all this tension. Like, hey, you finally ticked us off. We're now coming for you. You've been making a lot of noise for a while. It's like, oh, snap. And I enjoyed it. Granted, we've listened to the series so many times now, but I remember feeling like I was expecting it to be more of the book, right? We spend so much time in these other story arcs, and I'm glad we do, and the ending was good, but it was just like a couple of chapters, and it's like, okay, we now have this super ship, no longer 1,500 ships or 15,000 trips or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, but it wasn't a total knockout, you know. We still were
We
in
did
the
lose a
throng of it.
couple
We
good
lost a
bobs.
couple people getting blasted, and then, you know, it progressively was figured out where we could only do so many mover plates to get it going, but then technology and whatever running into problems with the bobs moving inside the hull, and then that conveniently giving us
Dennis
enough
has done
landing
project management in his previous life, like just talking through it all. Yeah. Workflows, optimization.
Yeah. I'm with you, though. I did feel like the others have kind of been built up to be this big, massive threat, and there wasn't as big of a payoff as I was hoping for. And maybe that's still yet to come. Maybe there's going to be a little bit of a resurgence, but
we still got combat for Peter. Peter being the combat junkie. We do get some space battles in here.
Yeah, we do.
And they're well done.
Quite a bit. And it was over several different things. We had Marcus when he finally goes on the rebellion, and you know, he shoots the Buster from space, and okay, Captain Crash, and then we accidentally forgot to tell him that we installed, you know, turrets on our floating cities, and, you know, combatant there. And then, oh man, my favorite, like, what just happened moment. I'm trying to remember the Bob, but we're communicating, just having a casual conversation with one of the Bobs, and all of a sudden he gets taken out, and our saving grace is the Cupid bugs or the super vampire mosquito things, as well as just like Madiri popping up from nowhere.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, a lot gets pretty weird, because we dealt with the Russian probe and essentially had the complete, you know, psychological breakdown or meltdown because he didn't have sensory input, and that's where they built him a body and set him up with the VR, and he was okay. But the fact that Madiri didn't say anything,
we get to see kind of like what could have happened there with some of the other Bobs, because the earlier generations, the VR was so crucial for them. And I hope I'm not getting books blurred together, but you get to see the progression where the later generations, theirs are pretty bland, right? The earlier Bobs, I think it was from Bob's second moot, like he always tried to like recreate scenes. So he's like constantly putting energy and bandwidth into recreating these real life environments and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And then later guys are just like, yeah, you know, I got a chair, coffee, like I import whatever Bill sends me in an update, but like I don't need libraries or whatever, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, and that's where I think it was book 2 where they're starting to see some of the ephemeral talk or the divergence. They're like, oh, maybe I still have the old copy I made you from, maybe we should bring him up the old-fashioned way. And he's like, yeah, with the little sugar around the glass or whatnot, and you get that whole
narc.
Yeah, that scene right there.
Voice actor Ray Portman, he's an all-star. Did you read it, or did you listen to the Audible?
I listened to the Audible. Yeah, Ray Porter is amazing. Yeah,
he does a really good job with the Bobs.
He does.
And that's where I was a little disappointed, because I thought after Bridget and we got the Russian probe all figured out, they would start replicating and we would get more, I guess, initial divergence, but we didn't.
But yeah, it's just the two solos. And then you have Bob, the 500, 10 plus generation organism. And then just one of him with Bridget and the other one just sailing all the oceans, right? The Australian probe.
I guess it leaves It's probably a better thing because we don't want all of them to be from the main human perspective. Because, we've got the others with their hive mind, and there can be only one prime, and then we've got the Pavs that are very economic conscious, and then we've
Right.
got the
They also have
oh
whole different family structures, right? There's like a
yeah
matriarch and then a multi-marriage where households are like 20 plus, I believe. Yeah, their storyline's fun. Tennessee Taylor just did such a great job, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're literally following how many different story arcs in this? Like, just rallying them off. You got like Bob with the Deltons, Howard with Bridget, Marcus at Poseidon, the Rebels, like all that stuff. Bill at Epsilon Eridani, and like he's one of the first cohorts, right? And then you kind of have like the senior Bobs just trying to help manage the rest of them.
Right.
Mac with the Japanese enclave and Vancouver Island conclave. So we get to follow the story arcs from like humanity at Earth and then going and adjusting to their own cultures and societies. Neil and Herbert.
or Herschel.
Herschel, yeah, thank you. Over at Delta Pavonis, the cargo. Jock with the Pav, Luke and Marvin going off to look for Bender. Drum roll, book 4 suspense. The others, Icarus and oh man, I'm cheating and going off our notes here. Going to butcher that, but the others' homeworld attack. We kind of get to see like what happens after the others come through. Right, strip everything bare, every bit of metal with the little techno ants. Thor, Garfield, Bill, the Moots. And it's just like all interweaved together just so well. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it is. And
he did well with his time dilation and his time hops and the frame jacking. And I enjoyed all the different arcs because it led to similar things, but differently. Because kind of like how we were talking to humanity and how Howard is, found himself a lady and is now accepting adoptions and, while cataloging different worlds. And then you have the same thing with, original Bob and his feels, and then with Riker. And yeah, it expresses it all, humanity, different ways.
Different lenses. Go ahead,
yeah,
Chad.
I especially liked you spoke about the time dilation and how he handles time, and I think that is really important, especially showing showing how important it is to be able to separate yourself from humanity in a way, because they're always going to die on you versus the Bobs are going to live forever, more or less, unless they're blown up. But and yet it's hard not to build those relationships to the point where you get so invested in them. And so I think he does a really good job of showing that stark contrast there. But even the relationships between the different AIs, Pete, we were talking earlier about Colonel Butterworth and that whole thing, and how that extreme sense of loss over Colonel Butterworth.
He was going to be the first one, right?
Yeah,
the first new one before Bridget.
And the way it builds up, like, I was pretty sure he was going to save our bacon, because we had the others. Yeah, Bob has some project management. We don't like explodey stuff, this, that, and the other.
But he was a military guy.
Yeah,
but tie it all the way through.
Come in, save our bacon after saving his home world,
But the tied into the time dilation bit, those that interact with the ephemerals, they're forced to interact at, human speed, where they can frame jack and go like exponentially faster as far as getting stuff done and trying to figure stuff out, especially as they get better and better heaven vessels, right?
Right. Yeah.
But Dennis does well where environment or environmental pressures, so to speak, play a big role for their thought process. So I guess for me, I would see a problem going down the rabbit hole and getting stuck in one vein where if you have ephemerals or someone else to bounce your ideas off of or redirect you from time to time, I guess I would see it being a trap.
It's a trap.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, I'm with you, Pete. I did think that Colonel Butterworth was going to kind of be the one to save the day. And
it's nice when authors can do that, though.
Yeah.
Where you kind of get your hopes up and you think, oh, man, this is how it's going to play out. And then he didn't.
Yeah.
And so we got our hopes up. And,
Yeah.
He did a good job.
He did a good job. Yeah, absolutely. We were talking earlier about the threat of the others. It seemed like the bigger threat in this book really ended up being Medeiros and the Brazilian faction, because I don't know. I just got the impression that he was more of the big bad for this book almost.
It was a lot of the unknowns. The others were a threat in the fact that, it's a David and Goliath kind of moment where they're big and they're going to stop us and they've been doing this for a while. But then Medeiros was unknown but unknown because
it forced the Bobs to play defensive too, right? They couldn't just rush to get ready for the others all willy-nilly because there was always that looming threat of we don't know how many other probes are out there. We got to think defensive, not just optimal workflow.
Well, that, and it's the whole, they often forget about time and space, kind of like our, Marcus thing when he's dealing with the humans who are, trying to be, take over everything. And he's like, oh, if they go south, they're going to have the whole Bobnet to deal with. And then things go south. And he's like, the whole Bobnet is pretty much me. Everybody else, it's going to be a couple years before they get over here. So,
got to figure this out. They can't outrun me, but it's interesting watching the Bobs get older, evolve, kind of interact with the humans, how we get to see humanity and their feelings change. Because not everybody's like, thanks, Bob, for making sure we don't die, right? They're let's take over the auto factories. Let's kick him out of here. Quit meddling. Go away.
Right.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, as Bob is like a supercomputer, essentially at this point, he's still very human and flawed.
Right.
Where he has some of those moments. Each one of the Bobs kind of handles it differently, depending on how they feel with the ephemerals.
I guess our next biggest concern is we started this whole book off with everybody nuking everybody, and now they have a little bit more lead time or build up where they're completely on different planets and they've got, advanced tech. So I can very easily see it being nuking whole planets.
Well, even we get to kind of see that, or at least what's in the background with the grandson again, right? I forget his name, who was a little boy early on with
Justin.
Riker. Yeah,
Justin. That's Uncle.
He was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
One of the first ones into space, being a pilot and doing that bit. And now there's whole freaking fleets, right?
Right.
Think about how much Bob was able to bootstrap on his own with the von Neumann probes. Now they have access to that technology.
Right.
And then you give a whole bunch of monkey firecrackers. What do we think might happen? Um,
Oh, just as
sorry,
well
wrong
as
book.
like
Children of Time.
That's okay.
Bob has a chance to kind of like observe, kind of like with the Pavs, where he was able to covertly observe and then do his translation routine and do all this others. Where I'm sure if we have a first contact situation with normies, it's
Yeah,
going to be completely different. A lot more shooting, a lot less being able to sneak into a library and read their stories and sit
or
down
listen
for
to it
story
being,
time. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Oh, the potential. The
Yeah,
potential. It's such a fun series.
it is. Yeah, there is a lot of potential. You're right. That the technology alone just keeps getting more and more high tech, and I think that's really going to boost the series forward in future books. So I'm excited to get to book 4 and see what new things are on the horizon, and then what he does with it from beyond book
Yeah.
4 as well.
And 5 and 6 and
Mhm.
7. Like, just look how far we've come through these 3
Yeah.
books. Um, yeah.
I'll be curious to see what develops with Howard and Bridget's relationship now. And
Right. Will she still stay just Howard's, or does it become like a serial wife for the Bobs, you
I
know?
wondered about that. Yeah, yeah, that would be interesting. The the potentials are limitless there as well. So
But as
yeah,
far as original Bridget, or at least like Bridget 2.0, she
yeah,
still very much likes Howard for Howard, right? Like,
right,
it's not the Bobiverse she's married to. It's like
right,
just them, at least right now.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah. I wonder if it might be kind of a thing where there's a bunch of offshoots of her, but they all have different names and slightly nuanced personalities, and
right.
you
They
know,
don't have to stay to their certain figure. They can
yeah,
wear whatever VR getup they want.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, maybe future Bridgets will get rid of the Irish accent. You never know.
You never know. You never
Yeah,
know. They're all digital.
yeah, they're all
Um,
digital. So
yeah, we
uh,
could go down the rabbit hole. We love theory
we could.
crafting. Yeah, yeah. He does a good job, though.
Yeah, yeah, he does. Yeah, I can see a lot of potential for the series moving forward. So now you guys have read book 4. Was there anything? Was there anything from book 3 that you didn't feel like got paid off very well? Not to do spoilers, but like
Yeah.
did
I
you go
think
into it thinking other certain things were going to happen?
I'm always theory crafting. I think
We
Carl
love the
explained
theory
it best
crafty.
at the beginning, where book 3 is kind of conclusive or wraps up, and Dennis does a really good job with environmental pressures creating the story or development for the characters, and it's kind of like a separate arc. I
Mhm.
guess for anime terms, you're doing one thing and then that's concluded and now you're on to the next thing.
It
Um,
does feel like a season jump almost, but it's still very much part of it, right? Like, a lot of the history of the Bobiverse continues. It just, yeah, we go to
there
another level.
I guess the best spoiler free thing I could say is there's not the others. You don't
Okay.
have
That
that
was a
common
big,
thread
that's true.
uniting you guys. So then you get extremists of every kind. So
Right. Interesting.
and I guess there's a lot through even book 3, like in book 2 where we had the Guppy, um, Amy hybrid, Or we had, I think it's it's book 2 still, when we first meet Stefan and
Right.
the Raptors attacked, and the paint job needs to get touched up. Oh, does the Amy controller need therapy, or are the Amy controllers tired of being the red shirts? And
It kind of
we didn't really
reminds you
see
that there's
any.
a lot going to the background too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just those little one-off scenes to remind you, as like, we're already following how many different story arcs in book 3. There's all these other little details in the background going on with technology advancing, splicing, dicing, advancing science in our androids. And I was about to say something, but I don't want to spoil any other books, but just the divergent paths, right, in the Bobiverse.
Yeah.
It continues into book 4. And it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like this series is one that you would have to do several rereads of in order to catch everything.
There's
and
so
all the
much going
connections.
on between all the different plots and subplots. That's why Peter and I, when we go back for a reread, we'll binge them just so it's like, this happened here. Oh, I see. It's that's what's so fun about this series, though. The rereadability of it. Yeah. If you have the time, it's definitely worth going back all the way through the series before going into 4. And a lot of times that's what Peter and I will do. Granted, we've started doing 2 live streams a week, and so it's a challenge to get through the book multiple times between Thursday and Sunday.
Right.
But if we can, going all the way back through and following the story arcs and the details, and
Okay.
He does a good job.
Yeah, that's good to know. I don't know if I'll get a chance to reread all the others before I do book 4, but it definitely seems like that is definitely true, because I feel like there's certain things that I missed, and so yeah, one of these days I'll have to go back and reread it. It's definitely a fun series, and I was on the Brazilian thing, I was actually happy we saw more of Medeiros in this book, because I felt like he was kind of hardly in book 2. He had been a threat in book 1, and then he kind of got sidelined in book 2, and now he's back making trouble in book 3. So it's nice to see those different arcs weave in and out.
And everyone has their own like story arc within it, and their challenges that the Bobs are trying to overcome, right?
Right.
Did we end up finding all the probes that left Seoul? Because I know we found the Chinese probe. We know of Madiri. We found the Australian
Brazilian.
probe.
An Australian.
I feel like there was probably a battle because they all went to similar places.
I thought there was 5 originally, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was 5 originally.
Because I'm curious if there's not one that managed to, go out the opposite direction or build up, or one that has its own. Yeah.
But even with the Brazilian probe, like, we still don't have a definite amount of how many times they replicated, or partial ones, right?
Yeah, there could be a whole bunch of stray ones out there that we're not aware of. Yeah.
Well,
imagine it like a replicating, like a digital swarm with some broken, no VR 400, no civilization. Later, like you said, the one didn't even interact with us. Who knows what was going on behind the scenes?
Well, plus the Brazilians had a couple iterations, because back in book 2, when we get back to Seoul, and
they weren't all Medeiros, right?
Yeah, it's
like
not
it was
Medeiros,
almost like
it's another guy who got shoved into the replicant, and it's just the flag.
Right. And it wasn't like a Bob to a Bill. It was like a whole different guy.
If we've seen the end of Vehement. We feel like we have, but we very easily could have brought them to any of our other colonies, as well as the Australians were the first guys to build the thing that the
different groups and
Heaven
organizations
Vessel
building up strength.
created, and yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely got the
Mm.
impression that Vehement was burrowing in deeper into the different civilizations, possibly. So
Yeah, play along so you don't get stomped, and
yeah,
then
Mhm.
diverge and build out from there.
exactly. Yeah. Real quick, I wanted to touch on Archimedes because he was a huge character.
Huge part of the series.
Yeah, huge part of the series. Yeah, and what did you guys think of how his story arc was wrapped up?
It felt very ephemeral,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
The word of the day brought to
I-
you by these lovely gentlemen, and Dennis E. Taylor is ephemeral.
I
Don't
feel
ask us how to
like
spell it, but
it-
go ahead, Pete.
it was a good one because it started off more from like the caveman-esque era and bringing them up and getting them in teepees and
He
getting them
did
so
boot,
that
yeah. He
and
brought them a lot of technologies.
and then it builds it up to it advanced well. It still looks like he probably didn't have enough babies because the whole population isn't that much smarter yet,
Right.
and they may have become
His
lazy
line
and fat
moved
off the
on,
junk
though.
food. Yeah, his line moved on, but when
Mhm.
they split and they had Camelot and then the other ones where granted they were all teenagers and there's no rules and the
These
mentality
little reverse
differences.
psychology, and yeah.
Yeah.
Her backwards triggering.
Yeah.
It was the son he never had.
Yeah.
And we got to see that, as he said, what is the term? Prime directive or whatever, when they get into the argument early on in book 1. He's like, screw that. They're sentient. I'm going to be the sky god. Like, I'm going to make sure this thing here procreates and the species survives. And, as the reader, you kind of go and dream, like, if we keep having these time hops, will there be one day where they like reach out and shake? Yeah, reach the stars and, the android. Yeah, all that.
I definitely thought we were also going to replicate him, but
yeah, that I remember first time I listened to it, I'm like, oh man, that would be so cool. They could play catch, virtual, like Bob Dad with Son with Archimedes. And I know they kind of have their like adult life together where he hangs out after he comes back from being a sky god.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sad to see him go.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because he was really the only he was really the only Deltans, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was the only Deltan that actually stuck by Bob through everything.
Arnold kind of like knew that he was still around intervening.
Yeah, I think so too.
But you're
That's
right.
True.
You're right.
Yeah,
like
the rest of them didn't want
Archimedes.
him to interfere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if some of the other Bobs learned from original Bob's mistakes or what, but
they have the blog, right, where they do the uploads, so they can like see these scenes and like relive them, but they're not the original Bob who's living it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Until recently when the Marcus and Poseidon incident where they had to recreate military secrecy and a lot more is being sent directly to each Bob versus it being a collectively shared whole because humanity's jumping on it.
Yeah.
You definitely get the picture though that the newer Bobs, like other newer generations of Bobs, are much more hands off. They're much more. Bob was the only one that really was sold on that whole sky god mentality, and the others kind of like, well, I don't think we need to be that involved. It depends on the Bob, but I kind of wonder if they saw those mistakes and they were like, maybe we shouldn't be too involved.
I
I
think we
think
get
Space
some of that.
Cadet Justin says it best, where he's like, "You guys are always doing chores. No one
Yeah,
wants that as an afterlife."
right. Yeah,
True.
that's
And
true.
we see
Good
that
point.
through some of the Bobs too,
Yeah,
right? They're like, hey, why is it our responsibility? Some of them really don't even want us around.
right.
Like, yeah. And then each of the Bobs, especially when you get to the 10 generations out, just like looking at their timeline where each time they have make copies and they got to pick a new name, they're, a branching path. So everything before that they know and they've experienced as if it's like their life. You got people like Will, where it's literally been 90, plus amount of his total existence at this point, even more than that, because he went there as soon as the first cohort. So of the
Yeah.
couple hundred years we're at this point, he's all interacting with ephemerals. Same with Bob. Like he had family 2.0
Right.
and did all that. And then you have people like Mario, who he went the complete other direction. They constantly keep score of who's gone the farthest. And his whole time dead, like hardly any interaction, just the first 30 years of original Bob. And Guppy.
Yeah, and Guppy's right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a fun series. Dennis E. Taylor's definitely, you see the growth in his writing. I feel by book 3, he's done an amazing job tying everything together. Book 4, definitely worth continuing on. A lot of fun. Yeah, I don't want to divulge, but you've read a couple of his other ones, right? The short.
Yeah, I read the short one, Change of Plans. And that's the only other one I've read from Dennis E. Taylor. So
okay.
Yeah.
I don't think he has a whole lot out.
He has a whole other series, and then the Singularity Trap. We've done the Singularity Trap a couple times.
Okay, nice.
But yeah, he's definitely gotten a lot better by the third book. I think the first one was pretty early on. Yeah.
It's definitely a fun series and highly recommended to anybody who happens to be watching. If you're into sci-fi, if you're into nerd culture, you will definitely have a good time with this series. Plenty of funny moments, sad moments, action-packed moments. It's got it all. So it comes highly recommended.
Easter eggs galore.
Easter eggs galore. Oh yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. And it's done in such a way that if you don't get a reference, it makes you want to go and look up that reference and find out what it's from. And so,
but you're not missing a whole lot too. The ones that you don't catch.
Right. Yeah.
It's great.
It is. Well, cool. Do you guys have any final thoughts on the Bobiverse up to this point?
You want to go first, Pete? You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Definitely worth picking up. It's a lot of fun. The trilogy, as we've said before, it wraps up super well. Book 4 just takes it to a whole new level. If you guys are just now coming into the series, you're lucky that it's already out. A lot of questions get answered. You get more questions. It's just a lot of fun. Looking forward to geeking out with you on that one. When you get through it, plugging on all our socials. You ready, Pete?
Yeah. So all in all, kind of like we were saying earlier, book 3 is kind of its own arc, or 1, 2, and 3 is kind of its own arc. I thoroughly enjoy the world. There's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of potential going forward, or if we're still talking arcs, a lot of potential. You can definitely I guess if you haven't gone through the series yet, tell that he took longer times off between books, because like 1 and 2 are pretty cohesive, and then 3 you kind of get a different writing style or vibe, and then
That's
4
very true.
it's very similar, but it's okay because it's kind of in a different arc.
Yeah.
Yeah, but all in all, it thoroughly enjoyable. Still one of the classics for me, and I frequently revisit it.
I was about to
Mhm.
say, like, if we're in a reading slump, this is one of our go-tos. Yeah, good series.
Very cool. Yeah, for me too. And I kind of feel like book 3 was probably the slowest for me to get into. That I didn't click with as much as the first 2, but still a very enjoyable read. So yeah, absolutely, highly recommended. And I'm hoping to start book 4 in the very near future, and then we'll be geeking out again. So yeah, this has been fun. What have you guys got coming up?
What we have coming up is tomorrow. I can mute that. Sorry, I got it nested. Axiom, which is the first book in the Arturian archives, by Dakota Kraut and Dennis Vanderkerken. It is in the Divine Dungeon world, which we thoroughly enjoy. Been meaning to get to the series for a while, and yeah, it could be considered a standalone,
You
but
could jump into the series at this point, 100%.
Dakota
It's not a bad
Kraut
spot.
Good to
is
know.
very
Yeah.
good for his Easter eggs and how he ties together elements of his other books. And
Putting it into perspective on the Bobiverse series, this is like following one of the Bob's arcs.
Okay.
And then the whole Divine Dungeon series is all the different Bobs in the greater universe.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Glad we're
Yep.
finally getting to it.
I kind of a spoiler-free take on it is this is the wise old man versus Obi-Wan coming to Luke Skywalker, and you just get a snippet of Obi-Wan.
This is true. This is
Obi-Wan's
Yoda in a
origin
way.
story, or yeah,
Right?
it's a very wise old man
Mm-hmm.
in a magical epic world. A lot of great quotes.
We need to get you reading more lit RPG, Chaz. We'll find that one just for you.
Yeah, we'll find. Yeah. Pete gave me some good suggestions, so I'll be.
Have you had a chance to go through the Watcher's test?
I haven't yet. No, I've had so many other things on
Too many
my
good
plate,
books,
so I
right?
just haven't.
Yeah.
Yep. Too many good books, and I've got some exciting stuff coming up on the channel. Book reviews, bookshelf tour coming up, or continued bookshelf tour.
Continuation.
So yeah, stay tuned for that, and make sure to check out Karl and Pete if you have not already. Follow their channel, subscribe, and they are top-notch content creators. So make sure to
thank you, sir.
Make sure to give them a watch. You're welcome. Well deserved. We're going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks for watching, and have a fantastic day. Read more books.
Bye.
Bye.